Crude prices among the reasons why the Marcos administration's economic managers lowered this year's growth target range. And U.S. and China agree on a trade truce in a sign of a de-escalating global trade war. We speak with Yoshito Hori of Globis on his views. Economic managers of the Marcos administration have lowered this year's growth target range amid global uncertainties. The Development Budget Coordination Committee, or DBCC, now expects the economy to grow by 5.5% to 6.5% this year, down from the previous 6 to 8%. The 2026 to 2028 outlook was also revised to 6 to 7% from 6 to 8%. Budget Secretary Amena Pagdangaman says the downgrade factors in escalating trade tensions in the Middle East and the imposition of U.S. tariffs. The DBCC also adjusted key macroeconomic assumptions. Inflation for 2025 projected to slow to 2 to 3%, while the outlook for 2026 to 2028 remains unchanged. Dubai crude is seen to average $60 to $70 a barrel through 2028, and the peso expected to remain stable at 56 to 58 per dollar. Trade, however, is expected to remain sluggish as global demand and exports take a hit from the U.S. tariff policy. Some analysts I've spoken to says the revisions bring the outlook closer to the on-the-ground and market expectations. RCBC Chief Economist Mike Ricafort says the changes align with forecasts from multilateral agencies and financial markets. He said that with inflation still within the Bangko Sentral's target range, future rate cuts from the Fed could open the door for future rate cuts and more accommodative policies to spur business activity. Philstock's Financial's Jafet Tantiangco says the U.S. tariffs will likely weigh on exports and inflows, dragging overall growth. Meanwhile, Ras Mercado of China Bank Securities thinks the new projections are in line with what the markets have already been pricing in. Motorists can expect an oil price rollback next week following the Middle East developments that have caused a steep sell-off in global crude prices. The Department of Energy announced this morning petrol prices set to fall around 1 to 2 pesos on the back of the Israel-Iran ceasefire. Based on 4 days of trading, gasoline is estimated to decline by 1 to 140 pesos per liter, diesel by 160 to 210 per liter, and kerosene by 2 to 220 per liter. Oil players hiked fuel prices this week on a staggered basis to cushion the impact on consumers. Meanwhile, global crude prices slightly rose across the board as investors turned their focus on oil inventories and the sinking dollar. Benchmark Brent crude gained by less than 0.1% to settle at $67.73 a barrel. West Texas climbed by nearly 0.5% at $65.24 a barrel, and Dubai crude inched up by less than 0.1% at $69.14 a barrel. And taking a look at oil futures, they're making slight gains in after-hours trading. Both Brent and West Texas are up by about 0.25% each. And emerging from seclusion for the first time since the ceasefire, Iran's supreme leader has vowed his country would strike back to any future U.S. attack. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei declared success over the 12-day war with Israel, culminating in an Iranian attack on the largest U.S. base in the Middle East. Khamenei made it clear his country won't surrender to Israel or the U.S. During the attacks, he was hidden in a bunker to be protected from any assassination attempt.
The Islamic Republic delivered a hard slap to the face of America. The fact that the Islamist Republic has access to important American centers in the region and can strike them whenever it deems necessary is no small matter. It is a major development, and this is an event that could very well be repeated in the future. If aggression occurs, the cost for both the enemy and the protester will certainly be high.
Iran's foreign minister said Tehran has no plans to hold direct talks with Washington next week, countering U.S. President Donald Trump. The minister stressed that Iran is assessing its diplomatic stance, underscoring that 5 rounds of negotiations came to a halt with Israel's attacks. Meanwhile, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said he was unaware of any intelligence indicating Iran moved its stockpile of enriched uranium before the U.S. attacked Iran's nuclear facilities. This comes as the Trump administration continues to deny the preliminary assessment of the Defense Intelligence Agency that the bombing only set back Iran's nuclear program by a few months. As conflicts rage around the world, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has warned that the UN Charter, signed 80 years ago yesterday, Thursday, is under assault like never before.
We see an all too familiar pattern. Follow when the Charter suits, ignore when it does not. The Charter of the United Nations is not optional. It is not an a la carte menu. It is the bedrock of international relations.
And just moments ago, Trump said the U.S. and China had signed a trade deal that both countries negotiated in London. The president said, quote, "We just signed with China yesterday," without elaborating. Officials agreed in London 2 weeks ago to implement the Geneva Agreement in reference to the trade talks that the nations held in May when they first negotiated a truce. The Geneva Agreement involved reducing tariffs after imposing over 100% import taxes on each other's goods. U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick told Bloomberg that the deal was sealed on Tuesday. Lutnick said China would deliver rare earths, which is crucial for manufacturing defense and tech equipment, and the U.S. would take down countermeasures. He added Washington is set to reach an agreement with 10 other major trading partners in the next 2 weeks as the tariff pause expires on July 9th. And 2 U.S. indices closed yesterday, Thursday, just below their all-time highs, driven by gains in tech and financial shares. The S&P rose by 0.8% to close at 6,100, while the Nasdaq climbed by about 1% to close at 20,167. Markets have rebounded since posting huge drops in April because of Trump's tariffs. The Dow gained by nearly 1%. And taking a look at the benchmark 10-year Treasury, yields were seeing it fall to their lowest since May 1 to settle at 4.253%. As for gold prices, they've notched up to $3,330.50 a troy ounce. Stock futures little changed right now as the markets open later tonight Manila time. We're seeing the Dow up by about 0.1%, S&P 500 rising by just about less than that, and the Nasdaq currently unchanged in after-hours trading. Asian markets tracking Wall Street's gains in the open, though currently a mixed bag. An hour into the trading, as you can see, the ASX 200 is up about 0.3%. Kospi Index down 0.2, but the Nikkei 225 in Tokyo is up over 1.5%. And a quick check on our markets on the last trading day of this week. The Philippine Stock Exchange Index opens higher by about 0.1%, 6,334. PSCI edged up yesterday, Thursday, by less than 0.1%, although most of the local counters were in the red, with mining and oil leading those losses. As for the Philippine peso, it opens today a tad weaker, 56.65 to the dollar. Peso closed yesterday slightly stronger at 56.605 against the greenback. And looking at the Philippine 10-year government bonds, they've settled to 6.378% this Wednesday, down from the previous close of 6.388%. Largest business school marks its first year here in the Philippines through Globus Manila Inc., the 6th hub in its global expansion. With us now for more, Globus University founder and president Yoshito Mori. So good to see you. Ohayo gozaimasu, Mori-san. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, you know, a lot of risks there. I'm wondering, now that it's the second half of the year, what do you think is the biggest global risk out there? I've read up on the Middle East tensions, and there's some update on the tariff and the pause that appears that there may be an extension, but still a lot of uncertainty.
Okay, I think the risk is three. One is geopolitics, as you can see from Israel, Iran, Ukraine. Second is AI. I might take it as more as opportunities. Third is Trump. Trump is causing lots of unexpected, like unpredictability and uncertainty. Those are the three risks that we have to keep watching.
And do you think that any of those risks have become detrimental in the way of your investments, as you're a venture capitalist investing and also supporting startups?
Well, I'm a very optimistic person. So I always take those as risks at the same time opportunities. Geopolitics are causing lots of changes happening, but I'm very optimistic that it will settle in a very nice way. It doesn't go into the full-fledged war. And in terms of AI, there may be some risks of uncontrollability of AI, but at the same time, AI will make more opportunities for us to advance human being in terms of convenience, in terms of the people, disabled persons can see or listen. And at the same time, Trump, you can see, is a person who is bringing chaos at the same time, bringing deals. We'll see what's going to happen. But I'm very optimistic because when tariff came over, people were shocked and stock markets went down, but now it's going up again. So I'm very optimistic.
Is that optimism coming into the way that you're investing? Did you invest a lot more money in startups in the first half, given the volatility?
Well, changes happening opportunities. Therefore, AI is making us to invest more, and then the deals require more capital, and the deals have become more global, and therefore we have to have more good talent, better technology, and at the same time good management skills, and more money is going to be needed.
Talent, technology, and market, are we looking towards more Asia or another part of the world that's going to be giving more yields for a venture capitalist?
Well, in case of Japan, we always have to watch the US and Asia for expansion. The Japanese economy is big enough, but we need to look outside. Let's say about 10 or 20 years ago, most of Japanese entrepreneurs looked inward, domestic market. But now, most of the entrepreneurs in Japan look overseas, for expansion. So therefore, some companies may be able to go overseas, but it's tough to be successful globally. But there is a strong ambition of entrepreneurs who want to become more global entrepreneurs.
Which brings us to the conversation of your investment here in the Philippines as an educator, and your university, Globus Manila, has passed a year and 3 months.
Yeah, that's right.
How are the enrollment numbers looking like, and why did you come here in the first place?
Well, we have roughly about 100 alumni of Filipinos graduated from Globus University, and then which is roughly about 10 to 20% of the whole of the alumni bodies. Therefore, it's big. And we decided to open up a Filipino campus 1.5 years ago simply because it has one of the largest student bodies of Globus University, Globus MBA. Therefore, we have decided to start Filipino hub campus.
So enrollment numbers are looking like what right now?
Well, like a 70% growth from Philippines. We have 16 MBA enrolling this year for full-time and part-time online MBA.
What are you teaching them? Given that we've just talked about a couple of moments ago about the risks, what are you now imparting? Is it a different way of approaching and navigating the risks? These are young folks that you're now training for the next generation.
We say two things. One is technovate. Technovate is the word that we created. It's technology plus innovate, technovate. So since the technology advancement, we felt that management has to change, MBA have to change. And therefore, we came up and invented a word trademarked as a technovate. So we are teaching students to become more technovate and technology-oriented entrepreneur. Second word which came up to us is kokorozashi. Kokorozashi is like a purpose of living and what we can do for the society as a whole. And it's more about personal mission statement. So if you have kokorozashi and technovate, you can become visionary leaders. That's what we say.
You know, to bring that down to what matters for the Philippines, it's really jobs, the upskilling, the importance of that, and taking into consideration the power of AI, which can either widen the digital divide or maybe narrow, or even solve the issue. So what are the jobs of AI in the future? What can the Filipinos expect?
Well, we don't know yet about AI. What kind of jobs they're going to create, what kind of jobs they're going to steal. But looking in the past about technological advancement, we feel very optimistic about human nature of trying to adapt at the same time change itself. In case of Japan, we have the largest acceptance rate of robots and also AI, simply because we know that there's a job security of companies. Even though we have a new AI or new robot, we don't fire people. And therefore, the society accepts the new technology advancement. If the society is like this, people will feel more at ease about the technology. But in case of Philippines, I think that will incorporate into more advanced economy. That's going to happen. And what's good about Philippines and Globis is that we have more than 100 people who have graduated from Globis, and more than 50% live in Japan after they graduate. So therefore, the job is being created in Japan. So if you look at around, Filipinos have an ability to become more global, and therefore they can find jobs outside. They can be contributing to Japanese economy by studying higher education like Globis.
Which leads us back to Kokurazashi.
That's
Thank you
right.
so
Thank
much
you very
for
much
joining
for
us.
inviting me. Thank you.
Appreciate your insights. And that was Yoshito Hori of Globis joining us here. You're watching Money Talks. Coming right up, we will talk about QueerCon with the chair of the Philippine LGBT Chamber of Commerce, Ron Astillas. And Vogue editor-in-chief steps down from her post after 37 years. That will be Anna Wintour. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back to Money Talks. I'm Cathy Yang. Just a few minutes ago, the Philippine Statistics Authority announces the Philippines' trade deficit narrows to over $3.2 billion in May. This marks a 30.4% decrease from the same month last year. Data from the PSA shows this was driven by a 15% increase in exports, which was led by electronics and manufactured goods, and a 4.4% decline in imports, particularly mineral fuels. The U.S. remains the top export destination, while China is still the leading source of imported goods. The Philippines' budget deficit narrowed in May as faster revenue collection outpaced spending, which led to the election ban. Data from Treasury showed the deficit fell by 17% to 145 billion pesos from nearly 175 billion pesos last year. This follows a 67 billion peso surplus in April due to the tax season. A deficit means government spending exceeded revenues, but at a slower pace in May. For the January to May period, however, the deficit rose 29% to nearly 524 billion pesos as spending outpaced revenue collections. The Treasury attributed this to boosted investments in infrastructure and social programs, part of efforts to support economic growth. Still, officials say the government remains on track to hit its full-year deficit target through prudent fiscal management. Several countries, including the Philippines, have pledged to ensure every birth is registered and every death recorded by 2030. The details in this report by 1PH anchor Jovi Francisco.
The birthday song was heard inside a meeting room of the United Nations Conference Center in Bangkok, Thailand. A room filled with youngsters whose presence in a global conference seemed peculiar. They are kids from all over the world who are here to show their support for policymakers, tasked to remedy problems that are being faced by persons without legal documentation. Some of the children present are stateless because their families were displaced because of conflicts. They were singing happy birthday to underscore the importance of having their date of birth registered.
For me po, nakakalungkot na wala po silang proper identification and they don't have the, especially birth certificate. Kasi during our dialogue with them, meron po mga stateless na mga bata. So some of them cannot avail the proper education and healthcare na guaranteed po as libre sa mga mamamayan.
This is one issue being addressed by the delegates of the Third Ministerial Conference on Civil Registration and Vital Statistics in Asia and the Pacific. And in a landmark decision, governments commit to ensure that all births are registered and all deaths are recorded by 2030. Presently, 1 in 6 children under 5 are without birth registration, and 1 in 3 deaths were not legally certified. And a lot of countries need to catch up to comply with the 2030 commitments so that by that time, every person in the world will have legal identity and ensured of services they deserve. The new deadline gives governments 5 years to fill the gap. The Philippines served as one of the vice chairs of the conference. USEC Claire Dennis Mapa led the Philippine delegation, and he was assigned to read the landmark declaration during this afternoon session. He shared with us what the country is doing to beat the deadline.
Ang target kasi natin doon, 99.5% of individuals sa bansa, for example, sa atin sa Pilipinas, 99.5% of Filipinos dapat may birth registration. Medyo papunta na sana tayo doon kasi wala, nagkaroon tayo ng COVID. So medyo mayroon tayong slowdown sa mga targets.
Reporting from the United Nations Conference Center here in Bangkok, Thailand, Jovi Francisco, we are One News.
Alongside June Pride Month, entrepreneurial members of the LGBTQ+ community mounted their first ever business expo in Quezon City called QueerCon, the biggest of its kind in the Philippines. With us now for more is the chair of the Philippine LGBT Chamber of Commerce, Ron Astillas. So good to see you, Ron, and congratulations on a first initiative.
Thank you very much. Happy Pride to all of you.
Yeah, happy Pride. So how did it go? It went on for 2 days, June 20 and 21.
It was a momentous event for us because finally we have a space platform where we can promote queer-owned businesses in partnership with the local government of Quezon City. I think it was a landmark experience because we rarely find people having that opportunity to I guess, support queer businesses. And now what we're seeing is in the market, you have an option. Make sure it's intentional where your money goes. If you can help queer-owned businesses, it really means a lot to us.
And it means a lot, that word partnership, that you get to find the right ecosystem, and in which, in this case, the local government of Quezon City. Talk to us about the backstory, how you got the local government unit helping out the chamber and the private sector providing the venue.
Well, it has always been about leadership. We're proud that we have a mayor in Quezon City who's very vocal in terms of LGBT inclusion. So when we proposed to her that the business sector is a partner of inclusion, partner of economic development, she easily said, yes, let's do it. Let's do it. It has to be not just in silos. Business sector plus the local government, or government in that case, should be working together to promote economic activities. And that's the reason why we're very proud to launch that QueerCon Business Expo, because again, the end users are the queer businesses. And as you perhaps provide 500 pesos, 1,000 peso when you purchase their items, it goes a long way into their own economic sustainability. What we want are government officials paving the path for sustainability, not just us LGBT people relying on them, but really empowering us by giving these such platform as QueerCon to make sure that businesses thrive, the enabling environment is all set for us to do our business there because there's no discrimination. There's a sense of belonging in that particular city. So we hope to replicate that, Cathy. And
Right. But did you have to bring a barrage of data to back your proposition that you do contribute to the local economy and the GDP?
Yeah. We have an internal data. What we see is around 2% of the GDP is contributed by the LGBT or queer-owned businesses. That's roughly $10 billion. In the U.S., it's even
both
larger.
goods and services.
For goods and services. In the U.S., it's even larger, like around 4 to 5% of their economy, or $1.7 trillion. But that's a very conservative estimate. But what we're proposing is the more you give us that enabling environment, the more we'll flourish as businesses. And ultimately, from micro to small to medium, we want large corporations that are being run by LGBT or queer businesses. That's how we change the narrative about us, by making sure that out there we have inspiring stories from the business sector, which the younger generation can look up to.
Give us a bit of color. We're seeing pictures here of the exhibitors.
Right.
What kinds of businesses, goods and services were exhibited there at the expo?
It's a mixed industries in a sense. We have services providing tax, applications. If you're an individual who would like to file your taxes online, then there's that member of the chamber that does that. We also have a travel agency, for example, that provide tourism services. But on the goods side, from pastries to clothing line to shoes to even coffee shops. So we also have that F&B, food and beverages. So it's really a mix, and hopefully it grows bigger and bigger, because as we say, the LGBT sector is not just limited to the creative one. We're everywhere. You can see us from the banking sector to farming, agriculture, mining, and all. So it's time to elevate the discussion and make sure that you see us as real economic partners, not just for a limited industry, but for all types of industries out there.
How much of a problem or struggle is it still, an uphill battle, when you speak with local government units in communities with a local culture that are not so accepting? I've been seeing protest rallies in Baguio, for instance, because of the local culture there.
Sure. Well, it's a reality still, Cathy, that the local culture, the preconceived ideas about LGBT people are really hindering progress for us. But more and more we see pockets of success. We see cities, municipalities with their executives really pushing the boundary, moving the boundaries forward, meaning in their own cities, everyone's embraced. I think that's what we need to develop. Of course, culturally, we have to unlearn a lot of things. We are also victims of our past.
Such as? Unlearn what?
Say, for example, that if you're LGBT, you're only limited to in the salon industry. You're just that. You cannot achieve more in life. At the same time, it can also be a religious hindrance for us. In some parts of the country, they still see gender as binary, as male or female, when in fact, gender needs to be diverse. Gender has to embrace all of us, whatever identity you have, So I think the pockets of success through all these localities will be a good solution to making our society more accepting of LGBT people. So, and in the business sector, that's important for us because we don't want to do business in a place that discriminates against us. As we say, we tell mayors, we tell governors, we will bring our businesses there but make sure that the environment is conducive for us and we will not be violated there. There's no discrimination. There's no whatever, negative incident that might happen.
It is a clarion call for the other LGUs. Well, thank you and all the best.
Thank you very
so much. Ron Astillas of the Philippine LGBT Chamber of Commerce. And before we go, it is the end of an era as longtime Vogue editor-in-chief Anna Wintour steps down. The iconic fashion editor reportedly made the announcement in a staff meeting this week, wrapping up a 37-year run at the helm of Vogue, or what's known as the Fashion Bible. She took over the magazine in 1988 and published her first edition in November that year. While she's stepping down from the U.S. editor role, Wintour will stay on as Condé Nast's Global Chief Content Officer and Vogue's Global Editorial Director. And that is it for Money Talks. I'm Cathy Yang. Catch us again Monday, 9:30 a.m. here on One News. We're also streamed live on YouTube and on our Facebook channels. Have a great weekend ahead.